ओरलैंडो फ्लोरिडा में होने वाला कन्वेंशन नहायत ही कामयाबी से इख्तिताम पजीर हुआ। अपना एंड ओपन के जॉइंट सेशन से डॉक्टर महमूद खान ने खिताब किया। डॉक्टर महमूद खान से मेरी कई मुलाकातें रही हैं। एक नहायत ही सादा शख्सियत के मालिक हैं। तकब्बुर नाम की चीज़ दूर दूर तक नहीं है। नहायत काबिल, दहीन, इंसान दोस्त, फ़र्शनास, अपने शोबे के माहिर, आला तालीम याफ्ता। अगर आप महमूद खान साहब को गूगल करें तो आपको मालूम होगा महमूद खान एक कीमती सरमाए के साथ साथ पाकिस्तान के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा नाम है। अमेरिकन बिजनेस काउंसिल के चेयरमैन होने के अलावा बायो साइंस के भी चेयरमैन हैं। हाल ही में बहसीत की नोट स्पीकर अपना और ओपन के जॉइंट सेशन से खिताब करते हुए हाल ही में उन्होंने अपनी स्पीच में कहा है कि दुनिया में सबसे बड़ी बीमारी अल्जाइमर है, जिस पर बहुत ज़्यादा खर्चा आता है, महंगी दवाएं इस्तेमाल की जाती हैं, लेकिन इस बीमारी से मुकाबला करने के लिए इंसानी खिदमत की बहुत अहमियत है और बहुत ज़रूरत है। उन्होंने कहा कि दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी अहम ज़रूरत आजकल ज़राअत और एग्रीकल्चर है। हमें सोचना होगा कि इसको हम किस तरह से आगे बढ़ाना है। उन्होंने कहा कि AI और IT की 2% दुनिया की ज़रूरत है, लेकिन ज़राअत दुनिया की 80% ज़रूरत है। और ज़रूरत इस बात की है, उन्होंने कहा कि अभी हमें सोचना होगा कि हम किस तरीके से ज़राअत को आगे बढ़ाएँ, क्योंकि इंसान की 80% ज़रूरत है दुनिया में। आइए देखते हैं ये रिपोर्ट।
So I thank you very much. First of all, I am shocked, not just amazed, at after the performance last night, to be up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, some people, and you're here. I mean, what is this? We must have a group of insomniacs or something, but I am delighted to be able to address you this morning. I want to echo what has been said. Perhaps we sometimes forget when we attend meetings like this, whether it's open or ForOPTV, people who actually do all the work have a full-time job, and they volunteer for all of this. And it's through that volunteering that these organizations, these events can actually happen, and the rest of us who turn up, yeah, we buy a ticket, have done very, very little towards making it a success except for attending. The real people are the people who actually stand up and say, we'll do this. So hats off to all of you. When you get to my point in my career, it really doesn't matter what you've done because it's history. What I want to talk about today is as much to our next generation, and not talk about what it took, because that is history. The world has changed, but how to think about what it will take. And that's an important difference. It is not saying, one thing I will tell you is never try and emulate a career. A career was successful. Mentors are there to guide, but you're not to copy their careers, because the world completely changes in that time period. And if you try and copy what you've done, and I've seen this go wrong in academia, way too many graduate students and postdocs work in a lab, they learn something, and they try and repeat that over and over again, only to fail. Because what made their professor successful was the inventions or innovations they were having that actually are no longer relevant anymore. And that's the worst thing you can do. The second, and I had the chance of speaking in Switzerland at Innovation Frontiers recently, and some of this, you just Googled, it's mostly on YouTube one way or another. And there's an important distinction between invention and innovation. And we talked yesterday a lot about innovation. And for the physicians in this room, and those who are more in an academic environment, an invention and an innovation is not the same thing. An invention is something which you come up with an idea. It may be an object, it may be a new discovery, drug, it may be a new process, it may be a new software. It doesn't really matter. It remains an invention when you file a patent, you publish a paper. Those are all inventions. They do not make any difference in anybody's life except for your resume. It's the only benefit to society. It becomes an innovation when that invention makes a difference in somebody's life. When that invention makes that difference in somebody's life, it is now an innovation. And there are several levels of innovation, and I've had the fortune and privilege of working in large and small ecosystems. But most of my career has been, quote, leading innovations. My favorite reflection on my career is I've never had a good idea in my life. I've had the fortune of recognizing good ideas from other people. And your job as a leader is not to come up with good ideas, but have the ability to recognize a good idea and back it. And when you do that, you will have a very successful career. So the key here is the ability to listen, observe, pay attention, and then back those horses, because the odds are 99% of the things that will affect the world will not be your ideas, but they'll be the ideas of people around you. Which means, and I think this is very important, you have to surround yourself with optimists. Way too often, and even at this meeting, I had a few meetings, and you see this pessimistic view of the world. And you know, Pakistanis love surrounding themselves with a bit of that. But the pessimistic view is good to listen to give you objectivity, but don't let it overwhelm you and surround you with it, because you will never make any progress. The whole idea of innovation is to have optimism that you can change something. And if you're going to change something, you're going to listen to that optimistic view and say, all right, what can I do now to further this optimistic perspective as opposed to be dragged down by the pessimistic? And we talk about, this generational difference of a younger generation always being more optimistic than the older generation. These old gray-haired guys, they're living in the past. We're the young. We're going to disrupt everything and disrupt the world and disrupt the family and disrupt everything we touch. Well, I hate to tell you this, but we were young once too. And we went through that. We're going to disrupt the world. I went through college, junior college, with a slide rule. Some of you might remember what a slide rule is. Some of you might actually have seen one, and there's been loads in this room who have never even seen one. And that slide rule eventually, I thought I was the bee's knees when I got a calculator that could do square roots. Remember those? This was a matter of pride. This calculator could do square roots, as opposed to those log tables. And then we went from that, and somebody yesterday used this buzzword, AI. AI is going to disrupt the world. Well, when we went from accounting books to an Excel spreadsheet, that was supposed to disrupt the world. And we went from spreadsheets to relational databases, and suddenly we could actually interrogate data sets through that relational database, and we could do things we couldn't. And those of us who were doing research, searching using citation indices, suddenly could do it online. What's my point? The tools will continue to change. Those of you who are AI gurus today are going to be really hot, and 10 years from now that will be the Excel spreadsheet, and the world will move on. The tools will continue to change. Do not anchor yourself in those tools. I've had 35 years in my career. Believe me, the tools will change. What will make you leaders is what I want to talk about, because there's innovation of a tool, and that will remain more inventions than anything else. And then there's real innovation when you actually start to think about systems. And you will use those tools to solve system problems as opposed to use tools for their own sake. So while I'm impressed with AI, while I'm impressed with that tool, I am relatively no more impressed than when the first relational databases came along and Oracle was invented. Those were great, those are great companies. Microsoft solved a problem, created a tool, and gave the world PCs. And while Apple may not be that innovative in some people's mind, but it gave us the mouse, and yes, they didn't invent it, but the ability to interact with a computer, other than have to type in code, was highly innovative. And it is the basis of all of the aggregate of those tools that are now letting you generate the next generation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So don't confuse these things. I have the privilege, some of you may not have ever heard of an organization called NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. That is the beauty of the United States. NIST oversees 97% of all US exports. And 90% of the Americans have never heard of it. What does NIST do? Well, for those of you, who in here is from software industry? Anybody? The next time you read, you look at your Internet Cybersecurity Protocol, that was developed by NIST. The next time you measure something like weight, like a kilogram, that standard was defined by NIST. When you measure a volt, an amp, a liter, anything like that, it's NIST. When you measure a second, the time, it is standardized by NIST. Why is that important? And I'll come to the ecosystem in a minute. Why is that important? Because for the first time in history, in hundreds of years, weight was always done as a relative measure. I don't know if you know this, but there was actually a kilogram sitting in France, based on which every unit of weight in the world was referred to. And if you wanted to settle 3x, don't kid yourselves. There's two types of innovation. There's fundamental innovation, which redefines a whole discipline. And then there's innovation, which is really what I call emulating, which is you take a standard and you say, I will figure out how to apply it in my domain. That is not true innovation. That is essentially adopting what already exists. And so one country may leapfrog another country in deployment and implementation, which has nothing to do with innovation. It's the fact that there's an installed capital base, and its fiscal responsibility is to know where you want to put the next S-curve and invest behind, versus solving whether I can get the hotel reservation on the phone, or do you really want to redefine the fundamental definition of time in absolute terms? And you might say, well, what the heck, why do I care? Because if you can put a light-based clock in every device on the planet, suddenly you can measure light in precision that we've never imagined, which means you will have the next generation of navigation, GPS, the next generation of operating systems, the next generation of sensors, etc. And that is being done in this country. NIST has just announced the next generation of portable light-based clocks that has never been invented before. And that will open up a whole new industry based on sensors and mechanisms that we have never been able to imagine before. Imagine a clock that's measured on light, photons, versus electrons. That's the difference. And so, never look at what you see immediately as the definition of what is innovative, but really string it together and look to the future. You say, suddenly, you start to realize this. I didn't quite appreciate this, and the other thing I'll share with you about my work in Washington is back when President Reagan was in the presidency, the Japanese were a threat to this country. That was the threat. It wasn't China. Those of us who are old enough, go back to the 70s, and the biggest threat in this country was Japan. And so President Reagan appointed at the time the CEO of Hewlett-Packard and said, you must now bring together in Washington what they at that time called the U.S. Council for Competitiveness. And the U.S. Council was brought together. They brought 50 university presidents together. You name the university. Those of you from California, UC Berkeley. Those of you from Boston, you name it, Harvard, MIT, those presidents, Cornell, Columbia, etc., Carnegie Mellon, all of these presidents of the universities came together. There are 13 national labs in this country. The 13 national labs are the labs that actually drive the fundamental strategic research for the United States. To give you some idea, for those of you who are doing research, 60% of the entire country's budget funds all the universities and everything else, and 40% of the US federal budget for research funds those 13 labs. As an example, every weather prediction model in the world is using the model that was developed by the Lawrence Livermore Lab in California. It is also the lab that tests and virtually tests the US nuclear arsenal, etc., 13 directors of the national labs were brought together, and then 50 CEOs came together. Again, name the corporation that were there. And that council has been working in a very unique way to bridge federal research, academic institutions, and the leading innovative companies of this country. And it is through that forum that we actually can strategically bridge the strategic research and innovation of this country, and in many ways the world. Why am I actually sharing that? Because my experience there is that I served as vice chair of that US Council for a number of years. There are 3 vice chairs, one for academia, one for industry, and one for the national labs. The current vice chair of the national labs is the director of the Pacific Northwest Lab. Many of your IT people, this is the federal lab that does most of the software research as a national lab. The current vice chair for industry is Brian Moynihan. For those of you who are in the finance industry, he's the CEO of Bank of America. And the vice chair for academia is Michael Crow, former provost of Columbia, currently president of ASU. Do you know who the US chairman is for the US Council? It's a Pakistani, Mehmood Khan. When was the last time Fox News said that it's actually a Pakistani steering the US Council of Strategic Competitive Initiatives? Why doesn't Fox News report that? Right? We know the answer to that. But my point is to hopefully inspire this next generation to say, well, the next time somebody tells you there's a ceiling, this administration, I'm Muslim, by the way, I said this a couple of days ago, you come to my office and you'll see Bismillah, you'll see Assalamu alaikum, and everybody and their uncle knows I'm Pakistani and I'm Muslim and I'm very proud of it. It does not change the strategic nature of the work I do. The next thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to leave about 30 minutes hopefully for your Q&A, is systems level thinking. Let me give some examples. There's iterative innovation. Intel is a great example of that. Intel grew because every couple of years it came up with a faster chip. Remember those of us in those days, we wanted the Pentium, then we wanted the Hexium, and your bragging rights was which chip you had in your computer, right? Yeah. And every couple of years, and you didn't care what brand it was what was the chip in that. And that was what Intel was doing. It was doing iterative research. It was making it faster, better, everything got better and better, but that was iterative. Then there's innovation that changes the way in which we do things. Many examples of that, but the internet changed the way we do things. It didn't change what we do, it changed the way we did it. Who out of you now goes to a travel agent? Who out of you now goes to the library? Who out of you goes to searching your research thesis? All of that, you're still doing the research, you're still booking your travel, you're still doing all that, we're doing differently. That is transformative research and transformation innovation that changes the way in which we do things. You're still doing the same thing. You think you're doing something different, but you're not. You're still flying that plane, you're still booking a ticket, you're just doing it differently. And whole industries got created out of that. The third level is the interaction between us as humans and our environment. That has changed. And it's been changing with the invention of machines. And those machines have been getting smarter, smaller, and interacting in different ways. Handheld, phones are an example of that. But we're still doing what we always did. We're interacting with our environment just through a different device. Believe me, when the first astronomers invented the telescope, they invented a machine that allowed you to interact with the universe in a different way. Your handheld is the same. It's a tool which is an extension of your own senses. And I want to add a word of caution here for those of you who think, we're brilliant, we're all going to be made obsolete by all these machines. Do you know that when the telephone was invented, the prediction was that universities would be obsolete? Because now you could actually teach somebody whatever they wanted with books, so they could phone the professor and get the answers to their homework. And when Alexander Bell invented the phone, university presidents were told you're done. That is a fact. And yet, 200 years later, universities are vibrant ecosystems using different tools. Now, why do I say that? Where's the next frontier? One of the things that I get asked commonly is, given all the different things you do, what is the next frontier? I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I touched on this at the Alliance dinner, but I'm going to elaborate a bit more. We have 7 billion people on the planet today. About 1 billion are hungry. By 2050, about 30 years from now, there'll be 2 billion, 2.5 billion more humans. No more water to add, no more land to add, diminishing yield per acre. And the pessimistic view is with 3.5 billion people potentially that need food, at least 2 billion will be hungry. And vast majority of wars in the world today are over the access rights to water. They're not for any other reason. Israel-Palestine conflict is over access to the Jordan River. Maybe disguised as anything else, but Israel needs water, the Jordan River has water, and the aquifers below the occupied territories are the access to water. Kashmir is about water. I can go on and on, but it is access to water, therefore it is access to irrigation, because 80% of the world's fresh water is used for irrigation, and so it's access to food. Pessimists will say we're going to have a lot of hungry people, there's going to be more conflict. The optimists would say, can we use technology to fix this? I started a little experiment about 6 years ago at PepsiCo. And I asked the question, what would it take if we deployed every technology we have available today, so not a single new thing is going to be invented. Just take off-the-shelf technology. Sensors, predictive models, satellite imaging, you name it. If we put it all together and we start doing an experiment, and I had the team pick the southeast of England, where we have a lot of potato farms, and the southeast of England actually is going through a very significant drought right now. So in the southeast of England, we have all these potato farms. We said, work with Cambridge University, the other Cambridge, not the one in Boston, and the Cambridge University, and said, can we deploy everything and we'll set a target? You know, when you're the old man in this corner office, you can have crazy ideas, you send these memos around. The young scientist in the organization goes, the old man must have had a free weekend this weekend. And we send this out, and I said, listen, I want you to deploy everything you've got, and in 5 years, I want you to cut the water use by 50%. And I want you to cut the fertilizer use by 50%. But I don't want yield to go down. That was the task. And one of the things, what's the message here? As a leader, be very, very clear in your ask. I was only asking for 3 things. Cut water use by half, cut fertilizer use by half, and do not decrease the yield. Now you go out and figure it out as to how to do it. That's the power of that young generation of innovative thinkers. All you have to do is set the clear target, and we did. 4 years and 11 months later, they came back to me and said, Dr. Khan, we cut the water use by more than half, we cut the nitrogen use by more than half, and actually the yield went up. We just reported that last year, at the end of last year. Why was that? Because with precision targeting, with precision agriculture, with precision deployment, with sensors, with imaging predictive models, all of that deployed, we could actually do that. What's the implication of that if you scale that now? If you scale that and have access to that technology in sub-Saharan Africa, in Southeast Asia, you could actually keep the yield of our crops the same and cut water use by half, or use the same amount of water and boost the yield by 20, 30-some%. Around the same time, I came across an innovative company that was just starting called Indigo Agriculture. Anybody here from MIT? So at MIT, their top innovation prize is a prize called the Lemelson Prize, right? I was one of the 6 judges of the Lemelson Prize at MIT a few years ago. I served for 6 years as a judge at MIT. I was not good enough to get in as a student, but they allowed me to judge. That's a different story. And one of the graduate students came up with the idea that if we harnessed the microbiome that exists in nature in the soil and actually partner that with seed crops, we could use the microbiome to fertilize its own seed by selecting the right variety of bacteria and coating the seed at the time prior to germination. Create a lot of IP in the coating technology and the genuses and all the rest of it. At Indigo, we started doing that. By the way, the valuation of the company at the time was about 200 million privately. We raised a small amount of money, the usual venture stuff. And everybody thought, oh yeah, I eat probiotic yogurt, I know this stuff. and the microbiome platform was launched. And the point I want to teach here is platform. However, on its own, it wasn't good enough because you needed to actually get the right soil environment, because microbiomes are very specific to the ecosystem, et cetera, I won't bore you with all those details. And the company got going with publicly available satellite imaging, created the models to actually look at the Earth, identify the fields, and couple that with biology and the microbiome, and created seeds. And the first wave of plantations showed a 15% increase in cotton yield. The second wave was wheat, the third was corn, we're now working on soy. And the yield increases are between 15 to 30%. The greatest increase occurs in those areas with a drought, because the microbiome actually can signal the cell and the seed of how to adapt to its environment. Nature is an amazing thing. The bacteria actually are signaling agents for the biology of the seed that's going to germinate, and allows it to adapt its biology relative to the environment it's going to actually germinate in. The bacteria see it before the seed does. I'm simplifying, but the point here is, our last round, if you look at, any of you follow CNBC's list of most disruptive companies? Look last month. Indigo Ag was the #1 most disruptive company in the world. And none of you probably have ever heard of it. And that's the point I want to make. Our last round valuation was just under $5 billion. We're getting ready for an IPO. You can imagine the size of that IPO. I have the privilege of being chair of the Science Committee and Technology Committee of the board of Indigo. What is my point? The future innovation is going to occur, and real disruption is not adapting what already exists but in your own ecosystem, but is actually thinking about how to integrate different frontiers. I gave you satellite imaging and data to the microbiology and microbiome and plant biology all into one. The most successful careers, my friends, will be those individuals who can master at least 2 disciplines and bring them together. My challenge to you at Open yesterday was, it was so narrow a discussion because everybody was from the IT industry. That is a very small part of the global innovation ecosystem, and it's going to have the smallest impact because the real measure, the world's biggest industry is agriculture. The world's biggest need is food and water, followed by the field that I'm in, and I'll end with that, which is aging biology. For the first time in the history of mankind, there are more people over the age of 65 than there are under the age of 2. And that will continue, which means in a society which is on a pay-forward system, which we are. Pakistan, you pay forward, your children take care of their last generation. In this, Social Security is paid for today for those who were from the past. It's a pay-forward society across the world. In a pay-forward society, when there are diminishing people who are under the age of 25 over time, and an expanding population of over 65. Let me give you a scary statistic. What do you think is the most costly disease in North America, in dollar terms?
Cancer.
Sorry?
Cancer.
Not even close.
End of life care.
I'm sorry?
End of life care.
Alzheimer's.
Might be addiction.
Let me give you the statistics on Alzheimer's. And it is the impact. Because for every person with Alzheimer's, there's somebody taking care of that person. By the way, if it's a family member, 65% of the time it will be a woman, and 60% of those women will be a daughter. Those of you who don't have a daughter, start planning quickly. That daughter, that woman who's taking care of that last generation, is not engaged in the economy. For every hour she's spending taking care of a parent, she's not contributing in her family, her own children, in a way. So this has a powerful domino effect. The odds of getting Alzheimer's doubles every 5 years after the age of 65, and at 80, it is almost 50% of the country has degrees of dementia. And that's what's coming, as an example. So you want to take on grand challenges? Ask yourselves, how you can play in that system innovation and really, you won't solve the whole thing. But what's powerful about the United States, and I started my conversation on NIST and the US Council, is the US has the ability, regardless of politics, to integrate its systems, to integrate its institutions, and actually create wave after wave after wave of disruptive technology. I just gave you one that has the potential to change the world's agricultural system. Okay? So, my concluding statement is, surround yourself with optimists. There will be challenges. Think of the frontiers of your discipline, but ideally cross over to new disciplines. I was really disappointed once when I left practicing medicine. I was a practicing endocrinologist and a professor at the Mayo Clinic. And I stepped down to take on the next challenge, and my father said, "Beta, kya ho gaya?" He really thought I'd lost my license, I'd pissed somebody off. He couldn't understand why, at the peak of what he thought of a profession, and I wanted to pursue my own passion, not that of my parents' generation. So for those of you as parents, let's leave Pakistan behind. Let our children flourish. Let them explore disciplines and frontiers that we never might have imagined. Because it'll be all of those coupled with our own that are going to make our future better, not theirs. It is our future better. Because if they're successful, that generation will be able to support us. Thank you very much.
At Arkansas Spine and Pain, we love being a part of the family that is our great state. Our mission is to help every family we can live pain-free lives so you can get back to taking hikes, walking the dog, giving your kids and grandkids piggyback rides. Give us a call today at Arkansas Spine and Pain and get out of the cycle of agony you're in. You deserve to get your life back ASAP.
Kaba Fusion is a pharmacist-owned, patient-focused team of professionals with over 30 years' experience providing intravenous medication to patients in the comfort of their own home. Founded by Dr. Sohail Mehmood, Kaba Fusion has 7 state-of-the-art pharmacies located across the country. Visit us at kabafusion.com to learn more about the benefits of in-home infusion therapy.
क्या आपका H1 वीजा रिफ्यूज हो गया है? आप अमेरिका में काम करने के ख्वाहिशमंद हैं? क्या आप अमेरिका में सुकूनत इख्तियार करना चाहते हैं?
Hi, my name is Bob. I'm with the Cornerstone Equity Planning.
यहाँ के शहरी बनना चाहते हैं, ग्रीन कार्ड हासिल करके बेहतर मुस्तकबिल की जानिब पेशकदमी करना चाहते हैं।
We specialize in the EB-5 immigration to the United States.
दी लैंड ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी अमेरिका EB-5 वीजा तिजारती और सरमायाकारी का वीजा है। अपना पैसा अपने कारोबार में लगाएं।
This program is tailored for the high net families who want to get to the US.
अपना पैसा अपने कारोबार में ही लगाएं और ग्रीन कार्ड हासिल करें। कम से कम 5 लाख अमेरिकी डॉलर आपको अमेरिका में रहने, बसने और किस्मत चमकाने का मौका फराहम करेगा।
I am happy to announce that our company is going to be touring South Asia in the near future. If you're looking to get in the United States as quickly as possible, please register today and schedule an appointment. EB-5 visa allows you to become a green card holder and later to become a citizen of the United States.
कम से कम 5 लाख डॉलर की कानूनी सरमायाकारी कीजिए और ग्रीन कार्ड हासिल कीजिए। पैसा भी आपका, तिजारत भी आपकी। अप्लाई EB-5 वीजा टुडे।
UWR, we believe education is a human right. United We Reach is a global nonprofit organization dedicated to providing educational opportunities globally for children who are deprived of this basic right. Please help empower a generation who will be the job creators of tomorrow. Support our mission and help create a nation.